President Trump is a failed leader. He will go down in history as the worst president ever. The good thing is that he soon will be as irrelevant as an old tweet. As an immigrant to this country, I would like to say a few words to my fellow Americans. President Trump sought to overturn the results of an election, and of a fair election. He sought a coup by misleading people with lies.
What happens
when... The cameras had barely started rolling when the moment came. With millions watching across the world and anchors unsure how to react, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Hollywood icon and former governor of California, said something that electrified the nation and threw the political landscape into chaos. On live television, during a segment that was expected to be lighthearted and nostalgic, Schwarzenegger turned to the subject of leadership, values, and America's changing identity, and then dropped a bombshell that stunned even the seasoned hosts. He looked into the lens, his voice firm, his Austrian accent sharpened not by age, but by emotion. "You want to talk about immigration?" he asked rhetorically. "Then maybe start at home, Donald." The crowd went silent. The implication...
In fact, as president of this great country, you have a moral responsibility to send an unequivocal message that you won't stand for hate and racism.
They hired a big movie star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to take my place. And we know how that turned out. The ratings went right down the tubes. It's been a total disaster. And Mark will never, ever bet against Trump again. And I want to just pray for Arnold if we can for those ratings, okay?
Was clear. This was no longer a segment about movie stardom or policy banter. This was now about something deeply personal. Referring to Melania Trump, a naturalized U.S. citizen and former model from Slovenia, Arnold's choice of words, "deport your migrant wife," was not a literal call for removal but a metaphorical mirror. He was challenging Trump to confront the hypocrisy many saw in his administration's harsh immigration policies, while his own family benefited from the very system he sought to dismantle. It was a striking moment, not because of its shock value alone, but because it tapped into years of frustration, division, and double standards. For years, Donald Trump had railed against immigrants, painting them with a broad brush, calling them criminals, job takers, and threats to American values. Families were separated at the border. Children were held in detention centers. Visa programs were slashed. But rarely did these policies touch the elite, the powerful, or their own households. Schwarzenegger, once a Republican governor, had long distanced himself from Trumpism. But this moment marked something new, a cultural intervention from a man who himself had immigrated to the United States with nothing but dreams and discipline. He had lifted weights in Venice Beach and clawed his way through Hollywood, brick by brick. His American dream was real, raw, and hard-earned, and to him, the vilification of other immigrants was not just political strategy. It was a betrayal. The backlash was instant. Trump's
You said history shouldn't repeat itself. Donald Trump is now the front-runner to be the nominee of your party, of the Republican Party. Given everything you said, does that concern you?
Absolutely not, because being a front runner of one party and letting them dig this hole deeper and deeper is going to make it easier for the Democrats in the end to win. It's sad to see that they couldn't come up with a new talent, with a new face that is a reasonable, smart, intelligent person that can lead this country in a Republican way.
You think there's no way he would win again?
No.
What if he did?
What is if it is a hypothetical question? But I can guarantee you that he's going to go maybe get the Republican nomination. Then when it comes down to the actual election, there's too many people now that have seen what he did as president, that I think when it comes to the majority on election day, I think they will see the difference between one or the other. And believe me, I'm not the first one to say, hey, this is really great to have Biden back as president. No, but there's just no better option there, the way it looks right now.
Defenders labeled Schwarzenegger's remarks as out of line, deeply personal, even treacherous. Fox News ran segments dissecting Arnold's career failures, calling it a desperate grab for relevance. Yet online, millions of Americans saw it differently. Twitter lit up with hashtags like #SchwarzeneggerTruth and #MigrantWife, not in mockery, but in solidarity. The symbolism was too potent to ignore. In one moment, Arnold had flipped the script, calling out privilege not just in policy but in private life. The imagery was striking. A man once called the Terminator had become the moral compass of the moment. And the question that lingered in everyone's mind was sharp.
President Trump, I just saw your press conference with President Putin, and he was embarrassing. I mean, you stood there like a little wet noodle, like a little fanboy. I mean, I was asking myself, when are you going to ask him for an autograph or for a selfie or something like that? I mean, you literally sold out at this press conference our intelligence community, our justice system, and worst of all, our country. You're the President of the United States. You shouldn't do that. I mean, what's the matter with you? I mean, whatever happened to the strong words or to the strength of Ronald Reagan when he stood there at the Berlin Wall and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall? What happened to all that?
And uncomfortable. Who gets to belong in America? Who gets labeled as legal or illegal? And why? What followed in the days after was a media storm unlike any other. Panelists debated whether Arnold had gone too far. Legal scholars dissected the difference between lawful immigration and compassionate policy. Late-night hosts used the moment for humor, but underneath, even they knew, something fundamental had shifted. It wasn't just about Trump anymore. It was about every American family that had ever been split by immigration policies. Every child who feared their parents might not come home one night. Every visa holder who watched the rules change mid-process. Every dreamer stuck in limbo. Arnold had, in his own bold way, dragged the discussion out of policy documents and into the living rooms of the elite. And Trump? His response came days later, a tweet, naturally. Arnold failed as governor just like he failed as a movie star. Sad. But it was too late. The narrative had moved on. The seed had been planted. Years from now, historians may not cite this moment as the turning point in American immigration reform. But they might say it was a cultural reckoning, one where celebrity, politics, and hypocrisy collided on live television. A moment when someone with first-hand experience of immigration stood up and asked a question America still struggles to answer. Who do we welcome and why? Arnold's statement.
Why do you think you'd be a good president, or would have been?
Yeah, I think that I have the talent to be a good president. And I also think that I have the talent to go out and to sell that idea to the American people. Those two candidates, Trump and Biden, suck all the energy, all the oxygen out of the room when they give a press speech or do anything. So no one else has the chance of getting the exposure. And there's really no one with a big name, so to speak. So that's why it will be easier for me, that from one minute to the next, that dynamic would change if I would jump into a race like that.
Let's be
Though
honest.
fiery, wasn't about Melania. It was about the millions like her, and unlike her, who didn't marry a billionaire or step into the East Wing. It was about the undocumented maid cleaning hotel rooms in Florida, the construction worker in Texas, the teenage DACA student navigating college with uncertainty. His point was brutally clear: if we strip away privilege, who gets judged and who gets a pass? The moment may have passed, but the message hasn't faded. In the age of soundbites and partisan spin, it stood tall, unedited, uncomfortable, and undeniable. The room was silent for a moment, an eerie stillness that seemed to defy the loudness of political theater. As the audience absorbed Arnold Schwarzenegger's bold statement, "Deport your migrant wife."
As the former governor of California, my home state, California's been in the headlines. Obviously, there have been these huge protests of President Trump's immigration policies. He threatened to potentially arrest Gavin Newsom if he didn't comply. If you were governor right now of California, how would you be handling the ongoing crisis that the state's facing?
Well, I think the most important thing is when you are in a leadership position like that, is that you are inclusive and that you work together with everybody. And so it means that you have to work together with local government, the state government, and the federal government. They have to work together rather than fighting each other. Fighting each other's agendas and all of that stuff, that doesn't do good to anybody. And so that's number one. Number two, the most important thing is to create immigration reform. Because all of this is happening because we don't have immigration reform. For decades now, this country has needed immigration reform, which means that we recognize the fact there's people in the south of America that want to come north to work, and that we therefore should supply them with enough visas so they can come, because we need those workers. So this is the bottom line, because then we would know who is here. We would be able to get rid of the criminal elements that are here and all of this stuff, so we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in right now. So this is my way of saying always, Democrats and Republicans have to come together and solve this issue if they really want to be public servants. If they want to be party servants and be party hacks and be tied to their ideology, then it won't happen. But if you want to make this country better, and if you want to improve this country and improve the situation of people's lives and bring the prices down and all of this, you will go and serve the people of America. This is what it is. If you're a public servant, that's what you're supposed to do.
You know,
so that's what I would do if I'm governor.
Yes.
A mix of shock and uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the room. It wasn't just the words. It was the weight behind them. A former Republican governor, immigrant himself, and cultural icon, Arnold had pierced through layers of hypocrisy in a single brutal stroke. The target, unmistakably, was Donald Trump, a man whose anti-immigrant rhetoric had framed years of political division, yet who himself was married to Melania Trump, an immigrant from Slovenia. This was no ordinary televised jab. This was history folding in on itself, irony collapsing under its own contradictions, and truth erupting in a space designed for performance. And while some immediately dismissed Arnold's comment as another late-night stunt, others saw it for what it was, a moment of reckoning. The kind that draws a line in the sand. The kind that makes people uncomfortable because it's too real, too unfiltered. But to understand the full gravity of that moment, one has to step back and examine the broader story. Arnold Schwarzenegger, once a bodybuilder from Austria, came to America with a dream, became a symbol of possibility, and earned his place in the pantheon of American icons. His journey, marked by struggle, hard work, and controversy, was a classic immigrant tale. Trump's, in contrast, was born of inherited wealth, privilege, and an uncanny ability to market himself as a self-made man. Their paths to power couldn't be more different, and that difference made Arnold's words sting even more. Schwarzenegger,
Mr. Trump has been indicted on federal charges, but most of the top Republican officials are siding with him against the special prosecutor. How do you explain that?
If the charges are correct, then he is going to be in deep trouble. But at the same time, I have to say that, we're always innocent until proven guilty. So we will find out what the courts say in the future. But if the charges are right, I think that he's going to be in deep trouble.
And how worried are you about the fact that he could be reelected president?
I'm not worried about it, because I don't think it's going to happen. But that's just my thinking.
Despite being a Republican, had long distanced himself from Trump's brand of politics. He'd criticized Trump's behavior, mocked his insecurities, and challenged his moral compass. In contrast to Trump's divisive tactics, Arnold often spoke about unity, compromise, and personal responsibility. When he stepped into the spotlight that night to make his statement, he wasn't just making a joke, he was delivering an indictment. Trump's stance on immigration has always been a cornerstone of his political identity. From the infamous Build the Wall chants to the travel bans and family separations, he cultivated a persona of someone tough on immigration. And yet, the contradiction was glaring. His own wife, Melania, had faced scrutiny for her immigration history, including questions about how she obtained her visa and whether she worked legally in the United States before gaining permanent residency. These questions were never fully answered, often waved off as personal attacks by his defenders. But in truth, they were fair inquiries given Trump's crusade against similar immigrants. When Arnold threw Trump's hypocrisy back in his face, it wasn't out of malice, it was a mirror. A mirror for the country to look into and ask itself, how did we get here? How did we allow a man who built his base on fear and xenophobia to gain the support of millions, while his own life contradicted everything he preached? As the live TV broadcast continued, reactions poured in from every direction. Supporters of Trump were out